Chapter number 9, Ratio. Let's define the term ratio. A ratio is used to compare two or more quantities of the same kind, which are measured in the same unit. The ratio of A is to B, where A and B represent two quantities of the same kind, and B is not equal to A is written as the first quantity A ratio the second quantity B. This symbol represents the ratio, and we will read it as A ratio B. Here A represents the first quantity while B represents the second quantity. We have different examples in our daily life using a ratio between the two same quantities. For example, the ratio of population in China is more than Pakistan. Ratio can be shown in different ways. For example, first quantity A ratio second quantity B. Now this can be written in the form of A divided by B. Now here the numerator represents the first quantity while the denominator represents the second quantity, and this fraction represents the ratio. It means that we can express a ratio in the form of fraction, or we can express fraction in the form of ratio. We have another definition for the term ratio. In mathematics, a ratio indicates how many times one number contains another. For example, if there are 8 oranges and 6 lemons in a bowl of fruit, then the ratio of oranges to lemons is 8 to 6, and that is 8:6. Now 8 represents the first quantity, which is the number of oranges, and 6 represents the second quantity, which is the number of lemons. It means that the number of oranges is more than the number of lemons. So we can represent this quantity, this information, in the form of ratio as 8:6. Worked example 1, and this example is related to the ratio. There are 17 boys and 19 girls in a class. Find the ratio of the number of boys to the number of girls, and let's find the ratio of the number of girls to the number of boys. It means that we want to find that what is the ratio of boys to the girls and what is the ratio of girls to the boys in the class. Let's find their ratios. Ratio of the number of boys to the number of girls. Since we have given first boys and then number of girls, so we will write the ratio between these two quantities, which are boys and girls, as the number of boys 17 ratio the number of girls 19. Here you see the second quantity 19 is greater than the first quantity 17, and then ratio of number of girls to the number of boys. First we have given girls, and then second we have given boys. So first of all we will write the number of girls, which is 19, and then ratio symbol, and then the number of boys, which is 17. In this case, first quantity is greater than the second quantity. So ratio tells us how many times one quantity is greater than the second quantity, or how many times the second quantity is less than the first quantity. Worked example 2. There are 33 lemons and 20 pears in a basket. Find the ratio of the number of lemons to the number of pears, and the number of pears to the total number of fruit in the basket. Now total number of fruit means number of lemons plus number of pears. Let's find their ratio. Ratio of the number of lemons to the number of pears. Since we have given first lemons, so we will write the number of lemons, which is 33 in the basket, and then ratio symbol, and then we will write the number of pears, which is 20. So their ratio is 33 ratio 20. Second part, the ratio of number of pears to the total number of fruits in the basket. What is the number of pears in the basket? 20. Ratio total number of fruits, that is 20 plus 33, which is 53. So here 53 is the second quantity, and this is greater than the first quantity, which is the number of pears. So their ratio is 20 ratio 53. Equivalent ratios. Let's define this term equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios are two ratios that express the same relationship between numbers. We can create equivalent ratios by multiplying or dividing both the numerator and denominator of a given ratio by the same number. For example, 6 divided by 12. We know that this is the fraction form of a ratio, in which numerator 6 represents the first quantity, fraction represents the symbol of ratio, and denominator 12 represents the second quantity. Now, we know that both numerator and denominator have the same common factor, and that is 3. Now 3 divides both numerator and denominator. 3 times 2, 6. 3 times 4, 12. Now 2 upon 4 is the simplest form of 6 upon 12. We can say that 2 upon 4 and 6 upon 12 both are equivalent ratios. Further, we can divide this fraction 2 divided by 4 by a constant number 2. 2 times 1, 2. 2 times 2, 4. Now the fraction is 1 upon 2, which means 1 upon 2 is the simplest form of 6 divided by 12. Therefore, 6 divided by 12 or 2 divided by 4 or 1 divided by 2, they are the equivalent ratios. Now it means that we can calculate the equivalent ratios by simplifying the given ratios. Now these fractions can be expressed in the form of ratios. Just we have discussed before that we can write ratio in the form of fraction, or we can express fraction in the form of ratio. As we have discussed there, that 6 is the first quantity, and this fraction represents the symbol of ratio, and the denominator 12 is the second quantity. Same as, let's write this fraction 2 upon 4 in the form of ratio. Then we have 2 ratio 4. And if we express this third quantity 1 upon 2 in the form of ratio, then this can be written in the form of 1 ratio 2. Simplifying ratios. We can simplify ratio by dividing the numerator and denominator by a constant number, or we can simplify a given ratio by multiplying both quantities by the same constant number. But before this, if we have given ratios in different units, we will make sure that their unit is same. For example, in the first part, we have given 600 gram and 1.6 kilogram. We have different units, gram and kilogram. So first of all, we will change this kilogram into gram. Let's solve this question and let's simplify this ratio into its simplest form. 600 gram ratio 1.6 kilogram. We know that 1 kg is equal to 1000 gram. Then 1.6 kilogram will equals to 1.6 multiplied by 1000 gram. If you multiply this 1.6 by 1000 gram, you will have 1600 gram. which means 1.6 kg is equal to 1600 gram. Since we have converted this kg into gram, therefore we will replace this 1.6 kg by 1600 gram because they both are same. Now let's divide this 600 gram and 1600 gram by a constant number 200. This is the method of simplifying the given ratios. We can divide the quantities by the same number, or we can multiply both quantities by the same number. Now if we divide this 600 by 200, we know that 200 times 3, 600, ratio 200 times 8, 1600. Now this is the simplest form of the given ratio, 600 gram and 1.6 kilogram. 3 gram ratio 8 gram. Second part, we have given fractions, 2 divided by 3 ratio 5 divided by 6. To simplify this fraction or this ratio into its simplest form, we will multiply the both first and the second quantities by 6. 2 divided by 3, which is the first quantity, multiplied by 6, ratio 5 divided by 6, which is the second quantity, multiplied by 6. Let's take the product of 2 and 6. 2 times 6, 12, divided by the denominator 3 as it is. Ratio 5 times 6, 30, divided by the denominator 6 as it is. Now we know that 12 is the multiple of 3 and same as 30 is the multiple of 6. 3 times 4, 12, 6 times 5, 30. Now 4 ratio 5 is the simplest form of 2 divided by 3 ratio 5 divided by 6. Now this 4 ratio 5 and 2 divided by 3 ratio 5 divided by 6 both are the equivalent ratio, because 4 ratio 5 is the simplest form of 2 divided by 3 ratio 5 divided by 6. Now the third part is given in the decimal form, 0.12 ratio 0.56. Let's simplify this ratio, or we can say let's find the equivalent ratio of this given quantities. Now I would like to multiply both quantities by 100. So 0.12 times 100 ratio 0.56 times 100. Keep in mind, you can multiply or divide both quantities by the same number. You are not allowed to multiply both quantities by the different numbers. Whatever you want, if you want to multiply or divide the quantities, you have to multiply or divide them by the same quantity. You see, in the first example, we have divided both quantities by the same number 200. And then in the second part, we have multiplied both quantities by the same number 6. And then in the third part, we are multiplying both quantities by the same number 100. So it means that to simplify a ratio in its simplest form, it is necessary to keep in mind that you can multiply or divide the quantities by the same number. Now let's multiply 0.12 by 100. Their product is 12. Same as if you multiply the 0.56 by 100, the product will be 56. Now both 12 and 56 are the multiples of 4. So we want to simplify, we will divide both quantities by 4. 4 times 3, 12, 4 times 14, 56, which is the simplest form of the given ratio 0.12 ratio 0.56. Or we can say 3 ratio 14 is the equivalent ratio to 0.12 ratio 0.56. That's it for today. Thank you so much.